Greetings.
I'm not ready for all this.
Piss off.
He is a tot!
I'm a model. I do modelling.
This is the story of Bread, the crowning achievement of one of the most successful comedy writers of the 70s and 80s, Carla Lane.
Bread.
At the height of its popularity, Bread outperformed EastEnders and Coronation Street, attracting over 20 million viewers.
It was lovely. It was like being royal.
It was Sunday night seminal viewing, and suddenly you couldn't walk down the street. It was a very, very heady time.
The actual stories came a little bit out of my life, you know, because I knew people like the Boswells.
A mum with 5 kids, a wayward husband, it's what everybody has in their lives.
I'd move if I lived next door to them. Can you imagine the racket? They'd all have Asbos, every one of them.
Carla Lane's Boswells were a larger-than-life Catholic family struggling to make ends meet in 1980s Liverpool. By using the city's unemployment problem as a backdrop for comedy, Carla Lane demonstrated her own Scouse resilience and created a huge hit which dominated the BBC comedy schedules for more than 5 years.
The smell of expensive aftershave, the jingle of gold. Could it be Mr. Boswell?
Greetings.
Few could have predicted the success Carla would achieve except Carla herself, who'd known as a schoolgirl that she wanted to write. It wasn't till the late 60s that Carla got her first break when she teamed up with her friend Myra Taylor. They wrote a comedy script, sent it to the BBC's head of comedy Michael Mills, and amazingly, he invited them to London.
He sat us down, asked us could we write something, you know, and we said, well, what? He said, could you write about 2 girls? And we thought we could. And we were given Liverbirds to do.
For their inspiration, the 2 housewives went back to the days before they were married, young women on the loose in the city the Beatles had made the coolest place on earth, Liverpool. With strong Liverpool accents, the Liverbirds was a fresh, young female voice amid the prevailing stuffiness of more traditional sitcoms of the day.
Carla was writing out of London. It wasn't metropolitan, it wasn't South East, it was Liverpool, it was a northern city, and she was writing from her knowledge and from her strength. And consequently, she was recognised, I think, very early on, as a major comedy writing talent.
Pauline Collins and Polly James played the original Dawn and Beryl, the young flatmates looking for love. But after Series 1, Pauline Collins moved out and Beryl got a new flatmate. Nerys Hughes played the refined Sandra. Behind the scenes, things were changing too. Myra Taylor also moved on, leaving Carla Lane to write the show on her own.
That shattered me, because I felt so alone and so incapable. But I took on a new stride.
Sandra, darling! I've been to see my friend down the road, so I thought I'd just pop in.
We've got a bit of a crisis on, Mummy. It's the Boswells.
Oh, good. There's nothing decent on television tonight.
Molly Sugden joined the cast playing Sandra's overbearing, snobbish mother, and yet another new flatmate, Carol Boswell, moved in.
Hello, Mum. Hello, lovely.
She brought with her not only her mother, but a family name that would emerge as sitcom's most infamous over 10 years later.
Well, I think that's...
Carla was developing what would become her trademark, a strong matriarch.
I have decided. I'm going to kill him.
I loved the 2 mothers. I loved the Irish mother, you know, common as muck she called herself, but worth it.
Sandra, darling, do get Mrs. Boswell a glass. Or a vase.
I loved the differences. I've always liked that. And I found myself just sailing. I mean, I can't describe. I just picked up my pen and it happened.
With the success of the Liverbirds under her wing, Carla crossed to ITV and joined the writing team of another family sitcom, Sidney James's Bless This House. But her sights were set on another hit of her own, so she got together with producer Gareth Gwenlyn, whose track record included 3 series of the fall and rise of Reginald Perrin. The project they came up with had a radical theme, the temptation of adultery. But it didn't go down well with the BBC's head of comedy, John Howard Davis.
What do you mean, no? Can't do that, darling. Can't have a married lady being in love with someone else. I said, well, she doesn't sleep with him, if that's what you're worried about. No, but he said, she wants to, doesn't she? She said, well, of course. I said, that's the fun of it. Sorry, darling. Write me something else. So, of course, I went home and I sat down and I thought, I'm going to write this. I don't care what he says. So I wrote the first script and I sent it to him. And the very next day, a motorbike arrives outside my house and a little note. Who am I to argue with a butterfly? 6 more, please, right away.
Oh, must you peer like that?
Butterflies had Wendy Craig in the centre of the family as the can't-cook, discontented housewife Rhea, with her won't-cook, long-suffering husband Ben, played by Geoffrey Palmer.
Rhea!
Again, Carla was writing close to home.
There might have been a bit of Rhea in Carla, certainly the daydreaming and the thought, is she or isn't she going to commit adultery? But it was a movement in Carla's mind, I'm sure, from the kind of safety of writing about girls in Liverpool to a much more grown-up piece.
Wendy the character was very like me, you know. She made little profound statements and she dreamed a lot.
What's going to happen to me? Will I spend my last day on Earth carrying a bag of groceries from the supermarket?
In a way, I was writing about how my life was going. My divorce was going on. I'd met somebody else was going on. Everything was going on. But I didn't let anybody know about it. But I was learning from it all. The arguments, the joys, the problems, the worries. I was living like 2 or 3 lives. And I think it helped me with my writing terrifically.
What I meant was that I was truly married, voluntarily married. Bound, if you like, by love and loyalty.
Good God, you sound like the Queen on Christmas Day.
Rhea's shall I stay with my husband or run off with a man in the park dilemma kept BBC Two audiences coming back for 3 more series. Butterflies performed so well that Carla Lane had carte blanche to write about whatever she liked, knowing it would be commissioned. She used this vote of confidence to build on her successful partnership with Gareth Gwenlyn and push her characters further. After creating Rhea, who never quite succumbed to her adulterous feelings in Butterflies, Carla moved to BBC One and gave Felicity Kendal, hot from her success on The Good Life, the character of a strong-willed woman on her own in Solo. Carla then created another hit sitcom for Felicity Kendal, this time casting her as the other woman in The Mistress.
Hi. Darling, we are booked in our own names. Separate rooms, next to each other. Collect your key, and I'll see you up there. Luke.
When it came to Carla's next project, old pal Gareth Gwenlyn had been appointed head of BBC Comedy and was now in the position to commission.
Carla would write what she wanted to write, and what she wanted to write at that particular time was a series called I Woke Up One Morning, which was about a series of alcoholics. Hardly the best topic for comedy, particularly as Carla would make no compromises. She would write it realistically.
This is the story of 4 drinking men.
I can remember reading it and thinking, this is a little dark and a little black, and Carla said, oh, it's all right, darling, it'll be fine, there'll be lots of fun later on. You know, and you think, I should have known better.
You've been a good friend to me. You've seen me through the winters.
I Woke Up One Morning was put in the experienced hands of Robin Nash, whose TV career had started in the 50s on the children's show Crackerjack. He produced Top of the Pops before moving into the sitcom mainstream, directing many episodes of Terry and June and No Place Like Home. Nash made one decision with far-reaching consequences, casting Jean Boat to play the mother in the series. But the result was not what was expected from a prime-time BBC One sitcom.
I don't think it became as popular as everybody hoped because it was not a world that we had the old nutch factor for. We don't actually remember too much about alcoholic hospitals and things like that. I mean, it's not an identifiable point.
That was universally, if not universally, it was seriously hammered by the critics.
I nearly really finished myself by doing that because I think people began to think I couldn't be very funny anymore.
Slated for having too much sit and not enough com, I Woke Up One Morning was Carla's first taste of failure.
I had long lectures from every head of comedy that ever existed, you know. You know, darling, the problem is, it was always beginning with the problem is, and I thought, oh, here we go. The problem is, there's always a bloody problem. Why can't I just write what I want?
Carla came in to see me, and I said, look, Carla, you know, the BBC have done quite a lot of your stuff, and most of it has been absolutely fantastic, but if you want to write for BBC One, which you want to, and we want you to, we're talking about an 8:30 audience, it has to be something which perhaps goes back to things you know a little better. You don't need to not have any issues, but you must remember that first it's a comedy.
Carla's hometown Liverpool had given her first big success. So when she was in need of inspiration, she decided to go back to her roots, to find her sense of fun.
One day I was sitting in my car and I thought, what can I do? What can I do? And I saw this guy. He was young, tall, all in black, elegant. He walked so gracefully, I couldn't take my eyes off him, and I thought, I want to write about you, but where do you fit in Liverpool? And then I realised I could fit him in very well, because he could have all those things and still be a Scouser, and still come from the street, you know. So he was the beginning. Then I thought, well, I better give him parents, it helps. And then, and you can't beat having a granddad. I loved the little streets in Liverpool, the frustrated mothers, the no-good fathers, you know, I could see it all, the mongrel dogs. I loved it, and I thought, I'm going to write about that. And it all came together again.
So the Boswells were born, warts, granddads, dogs and all. And who was to play the suave, sophisticated man in black Carla couldn't take her eyes off? Joey, the eldest of the Boswell brood.
If Carla saw somebody smooth and cool in the street and then looked at me and thought, yeah, he's who I want to play him, she's obviously needs to change her prescription.
Peter Howitt had already exposed his talents to Carla and Felicity when he was cast by Gareth Gwenlyn in Solo.
Oh, I thought he was gorgeous. He was lovely. He was tall and slim and good-looking and sexy. Everything we wanted.
To be offered a part in a Carla Lane, I don't think, oh, should I do that? Is Carla gone off the boil? Is this the right move for me? Someone offers you a part in a Carla Lane series, you've just started acting, or you've been acting for 5 or 6 years and nothing great has happened. You don't even make those decisions. You're just so happy you can't even, you don't think about things like that. I didn't anyway. I didn't think, this is a good idea. Yes, please.
Next to be cast was Nellie, the Boswell matriarch and the comic centre of the family. Carla and Bread's producer, Robin Nash, remembered Jean Boat as one of the positive things to come out of I Woke Up One Morning. Jean had comedy form, appearing in Last of the Summer Wine, as well as surviving the natural catastrophe of Michael Crawford in Some Mothers Do Have 'Em.
Good evening. I'm your new neighbour. Just look at my bedroom!
But it was her memorable role in Boys from the Black Stuff which gave Jean Boat real Liverpool cred. So Robin Nash asked her to read for Nellie.
He didn't give me an outline of character. So I turned up to meet Susie Belvin, who's going to direct the first series. And so she said, well, what do you think? I said, I gather she's got this dreadful husband who's going out with this tart. And I've got these wonderful kids, none of them work, yet we live like lords, because they're doing very well on the black economy. I said, that's very funny, because I used to be head of the DSS in Boys from the Black Stuff.
Yours not to reason why, yours but to do or die.
Mrs. Boswell was a very typical matriarchal Liverpool lady, and mother characters, mother figures, are identifiable. I mean, not exactly. Not everybody has an unruly family as Mrs. Boswell had. But she represented and carried on and tried to get everybody on the right path and settle the arguments and things like that.
How can I be calm? Look at them! The Three Musketeers!
The brothers were just a kind of United Nations of mess, weren't they? Let's be honest.
To make up the rest of the Boswell family, Robin Nash put together a cast of untried comedy actors. Ronald Forfer played Nellie's wayward husband, Freddie. Victor Maguire was cast as Jack, the wise, scally wheeler-dealer of the Boswells. And the youngest and daftest brother, Billy, was played by Nick Conway.
Got no future, got no bread. But I've got dreams inside me head.
He was great fun to play, really was. A lot of energy, lots of tears, lots of laughter. Quite a highly charged character. I had a great relationship with his brother, Adrian, and they just wound each other up continuously.
Oh, that's
Billy!
it. That's it. I'm not sitting next to him anymore. You hate me, don't you? You're getting warm.
Jonathan Morris, who had become a bit of a TV heartthrob playing another brother, Beau Gestes, was artistic Adrian Boswell, forever convinced he was born into the wrong family.
He just was supposed to be born into some aristocratic family and carries around all these airs of disillusionment of, you know, the great life he should be having, and just sort of poetic idiocy that used to come out with.
I'm a poet! I'm a published poet!
There wasn't a stand-up comedian amongst us. None of us were known. Just 5, 6 actors working together, really. And maybe that's why it was so special. It wasn't like any other comedy series where there was a stand-up comedian at the top of it. And that's why it was special.
Jean took on the mother role to heart. She would regularly bring in vitamin pills for us all, because we were in our 20s and having a lot of fun and going out a lot and, you know, that sort of thing. And I suppose some weeks we'd look a bit worse for wear.
She was like our mum. It was like having your mum at work with you. It was great. She'd come and say, "Have you eaten?"
It must have been hard for her, actually, having to cope with all these young egos around a table, you know.
Prayers, everybody.
The supportive family atmosphere among the cast mirrored what was happening round the Boswells' kitchen table.
I know I'm a failure.
Nobody's a failure in this family, Adrian. We all have our lucky days and our unlucky days.
I'm very moved.
The serious through line, which is why it worked, was that people could relate to people who are basically on their uppers, who have got to find a way to get by. And have got to find a way of carving out a living and putting some money in the chicken, getting some money in the bank, getting some food on the table. You know, that's why Mum's whole thing, the matriarchal thing, is keep the family unit solid. Whatever's happening, however bad life is, however it's treating you, you come together in the evening, round the table, you chip in, okay, where you get it from, if you've only got 5p, it doesn't matter, you're contributing.
By bringing that in, that's sort of an old-fashioned idea. I thought that was why families liked it.
Nellie's family was completed by Aveline, the only girl in the Boswell clan.
I want to be a model. She was funny. And the close-ups we got of her short skirts and these awful shoes, and she could hardly walk in them.
After parts in Coronation Street, and then Boys from the Black Stuff, Gilly Coman had her first taste of comedy, appearing in Ronnie Barker's Open All Hours, before joining the Boswells.
I've been mugged! Oh my God!
As soon as anything bad happened to Aveline, it was like, troops out the door, right, where is he? You don't touch Aveline. She was the precious princess of the family.
Did he touch you? I'll go out there and kill him. Did he?
No, he just took me bag.
Oh, thank God for that.
It had me glitter eyeliner in and me contour colour compact.
Completing the Boswell lineup was Kenneth Waller, whose grumpy, foul-mouthed grandad next door was the latest in a series of old men. Kenneth had served his apprenticeship as old Mr. Grace in Are You Being Served? Although as Grandad he was playing a 75-year-old, he was under 60 when he landed the role in Bread.
Piss off.
By the time the first series was halfway through, certainly by the latter of the 6 or 7 episodes, it had an enormous, a bigger than average audience on BBC One.
To come back and knock everything else you'd done out of the park, or do something at the same level as the Liver Birds, there's not many people who've done that.
She was back on home territory. She was writing about the kind of people that you would have known and encountered and enjoyed. And it was genuinely, from straight off the page, it was funny.
I mean, you must have loved me once. We've got 5 kids. You must have loved me 5 times.
Only one was love, 2 were duty, 1 was a Christmas party, and 1 was a trip to Brighton.
You seldom get to the point when you think, yeah, I've done that and it's great. And I felt that about Bread. It gave me that feeling that I was doing something good.
It was set around a family who were mainly on the dole, didn't have any jobs, would bob and weave, but they were trying to make the best of their lot. And if the system couldn't work for them, they tried to work the system.
Number 1.
House!
And it was just funny whenever they went in there. I mean, they were claiming everything, weren't they?
We have got a case of incontinence in the family, and I understand you have a special allowance for this?
We do, yes.
It's very severe. We have to keep buying him a new bed.
Viewers loved watching the Boswells beating the system. With one major exception. Viewers in Liverpool were offended by the Boswells. To them, Carla Lane was reinforcing the stereotype of the unemployed Scouse scrounger.
I was really amazed how much criticism came my way. I was writing about what I knew to be so, and people seemed not to want to admit any of it.
The people from Liverpool would be kidding themselves if they didn't think they were very quick-witted, scally-minded, kind of, you know how to bob and weave, because they are. That's part of their wonderful character. That's part of what makes them who they are. And Londoners are the same. There's scallywags everywhere. There's scallywags all around the world.
I remember arriving at Lime Street Station with my cases ready to start a 3-week filming stint, and the driver refusing to take me. Hey, you, he said, you're giving us a bad name. We don't like that. On your bike.
I suppose there were criticisms about what was the social point it was making and what mirror was it reflecting on society and how was it representing people from Liverpool and was that good, was that bad, and was it correct and PC and all that rubbish. It was my first big job on TV. All I wanted to know was, did anyone think I was any good?
Heard about but never seen.
Cow! Tart. He is a tart!
It wasn't until Series 3 that Carla introduced the Scarlet Woman in Husband Freddy's life, played by Eileen Pollock.
The tart!
Once again in Carla's work, a character who was a mistress proved to be a real ratings grabber.
She ran away with my husband, your father.
I was going through funny names that Mrs. Boswell would call her. And I was thinking of Bed always, because, you know, they were always at it in the shed, in the allotment. And suddenly I thought of a Lilo mattress, and that led me to Lil, and I thought, oh, here we go, Lilo Lil, she shall be that.
You just get my white high heels, clickety-clackety, clickety-clackety, clickety, up these perilous streets of Liverpool to go and knock on Nellie Boswell's door.
You don't get off my doorstep. I'll kill you.
And then have our first spat, which ends in a fight.
And it was a very good fight. Indeed, as I threw her out of my house, that tart. I still see her. She's lovely, really.
Carla had created a character who's now part and parcel of the culture of Britain. Everybody knows what a Lilo Lil means, you know. And that's classic, isn't it?
Bread's viewing figures were now hitting the 18 million mark and had made household names of the cast. Fame and fortune beckoned.
We got paid, like, literally £300 an episode. And then the second series we got £322 an episode, and then it was a big hit. They gave us £368 an episode, and we're like, oh, what? We made it now.
Everybody crowded them wherever they went. We couldn't go anywhere. We were absolutely besieged. It was lovely.
It was just brilliant because it's, you know, any actor who says, oh, I want to act because I want to be, they're just lying. They want to be famous and they want people to come up in the street and ask them for their autograph. And I literally couldn't walk down the street.
With Bread, the top-rating TV, even pop stars and their wives came on the show to play themselves.
There you go. Could you sign me Grandad's bus pass, please?
Linda was my best friend, and I loved her dearly. And Paul is my friend. And I said to Linda, would you like to be in one of the shows? You write it, honey, I'll do it. And then I thought, I'll go further than this. I said, Paul, you know, you write it, Carla. If I like it, I'll do it.
Oh, hi, is Billy here, please?
No, I'm sorry. They're all out.
Linda was very good, actually. She was as good as an actress. Perhaps a little more real, but the conversation between she and Mrs. Boswell would say things like, have you got a husband? Because she'd no idea who she was. Yeah, I got a husband. It was great. You know, it was easy to write, too.
Family's a strength, I'd say. Yeah. Your husband got a job, has he?
Yeah, at the moment, so far.
Not made redundant like my Adrian.
I said to Carla, if Paul and Linda McCartney are coming to do an episode of Bread, and I am not in a scene with Paul McCartney, I will never, ever talk to you again.
Basil, that was lovely.
Can you bring me a cake?
Carla. Lovely girl, that. Cost of the earth. Didn't know she kept a taxi waiting.
By the end of Series 4, Bread's popularity reached its high watermark. Over 21 million viewers were in the congregation when Aveline finally tottered down the aisle.
He looks shorter than I thought he was. Dear God, what am I doing?
This has got to be the most disastrous thing I've ever done in my life.
There was no doubt that the Boswells had given Carla a winning comedy formula. But trouble was brewing inside the family itself. And by the fourth series, cast members were leaving the safety of Nellie's kitchen table. Gilly Coman was the first to jump ship.
Sick of being ordered about by a cheap jack photographer.
Reluctant to fit in with the Bread schedule at the expense of her own real-life family.
I went berserk. I rang up the producers and said, we can look after Gilly's kids. We can give her a nanny, get her a flat and look after her. This is nonsense, you know, she's brilliant.
But Gilly Coman couldn't be persuaded, and the original Aveline wiggled her way out of Bread forever. She was soon followed by an even more dramatic exit.
Well, he came to me before anybody else and said, look, I think I've got to go. And I was mortified. I said, oh, please don't. He said, I've got to go, kid. I've got things to do.
I just felt like it had just got repetitive. It was successful, great, but I just wanted to see what else I could do. I was only 30, 31. I wanted to see what else I could do.
Give him another series, double his salary, I said to them. What are you doing? In America, they wouldn't allow this to happen. But in England and the BBC, oh, we can replace him. I said, no, you can't. You really can't do this, and you can't replace them.
People wrote into the paper saying, oh, he's left, how dare he, he'll soon disappear into oblivion, he'll be sorry. And, you know, it's funny because you think, well, maybe I will, but I haven't left to because I think I'm bigger or better than any of that. I just want to try something else, that's all. And if there isn't anything else for me, then I still did that, and it was still great, and there was nothing else, and great. I'm quite happy.
Life after Bread for Peter Howitt included parts in TV dramas like Linda LaPlante's Civvies. He also appeared in the Name of the Father with Daniel Day-Lewis. Then, disillusioned with what he was being offered, he took a chance and gave up acting in favour of a BBC director's course. Meanwhile, back on the set of Bread, there was the problem of replacing two of the family's most popular members.
When Peter chose to leave, the BBC's response would have been, first of all, to evaluate the worth of the series, which at the time was enormous, and the next thought would be, how do we put this right?
The decision was taken to recast. The new kids on Kelsall Street were Melanie Hill, who took on Aveline after several appearances in Auf Wiedersehen Pet, while Graham Bickley, whose main experience had been in musicals, was now entrusted with being the new Joey.
Greetings. I think I was truly appalling for the first couple of days because I just didn't know what was going on. Everybody was being lovely, but it was like being shot out of a cannon. But I think a huge chunk of naivety and boyish enthusiasm, I just went with it. And I didn't think about the huge responsibility that it was at the time. And the family were great, the TV family were great. They just sort of gathered round me, and they knew the size of the task in hand. And of course, with Melanie coming in at the same time, we had each other to sort of lean on.
With Aveline's avalanche of makeup and outrageous frocks, Melanie soon looked the part.
I was walking round a shopping arcade in Liverpool, and this old couple were following me around, and they were doing the old rubbernecking, and I thought, oh bless them, they want an autograph, and they were following me from shop to shop, and then they eventually came up to me and said, oh, it's, could we have your autograph? We're really, really sorry that you left Bread, Jilly. We hate that new Aveline. And it was like, what do I do in this situation, really? So basically I signed it, Jilly come, and because I didn't have the heart to say, well, actually, I am that crap new Aveline that you didn't think was very good.
The couple of scripts that I started with, Joey got in trouble with the tax, and he was also seen in his dressing gown. Written into the script by Carla, but of course the public didn't like this, and I got lots of letters saying, you know, Peter's Joey never would have got in trouble with the tax people, and he never had a dressing gown like that. What can you do? It was nothing to do with me. I did what I was told.
He couldn't be the boss. He had to be written differently because he wasn't Peter Howard, and I think he knew it, and the whole cast knew it. That was the beginning of, not its downfall by any means, but the beginning of losing some magic.
People identify with television characters very strongly, especially when they're established, as Peter's was, you know. So I just had to take a very deep breath and carry on and hope that we won them over.
We replaced Aveline, we replaced Joey, and it was working. They accepted that. To my surprise, the public did. We did another 3 years.
Well, there you go. I mean, this sometimes does offend actors when you explain that in major series that have had a major change, actors, the general public don't often notice.
But even if the faces changed, they were still speaking Carla's lines. Carla continued to explore the humour to be found in the dramatic side of family life, but it still came as a shock when the passionate animal lover decided to kill off the beloved family dog, Mongie.
Mum! Mongie's been run over!
Stay there.
It was just so funny. Mrs. Boswell had reasons not to have him buried anywhere. She didn't want him in the park where other dogs would pee on him. She didn't want him on his own in the garden where he'd be lonely. And in the end, they threw the ashes.
See, Mush.
Some wind blew them all back all over them.
Yourselves together now. I've got some in me eye.
And they stood there covered in white. I mean, I didn't write that. It happened.
How's your eye, son?
Oh, it's all right.
By the 7th series, Carla felt she had put the Boswells through enough.
I think I said to them, I've said all I can do now about this family.
On the last episode, I had a row with Mother, which hitherto had been unheard of. And I stormed out, and that was that. So that was actually incredibly moving, and I remember in rehearsals for that particular episode, when the first time Jean and I did it, we both ended up in floods of tears.
Oh, for Christ's sake, man, we are men! We have done the very thing that most men do. We have got married.
For Carla to allow Joey to finally blow his top was, as an actor, a great thing to be able to do. but it also was very dramatic for that particular episode.
You with your rules and your philosophies, you with your obsession about how bad it is out there and how good it is in here. Well, we've stayed with you, ma'am, for as long as we could. But it's over now.
I wiped it out of my mind, perhaps deliberately.
It was quite sad, really. It was the end of an era for all of us. But I suppose in another sense, we were quite looking forward to, you know, what's going to happen now, you know, what fresh new horizons are there for us.
After Bread, Robin Nash went on to produce the time-travelling sitcom Goodnight Sweetheart, and actor Victor Maguire joined him. Nick Conway and Melanie Hill appeared together again in the film When Saturday Comes, which also starred Melanie's now ex-husband, Sean Bean. Melanie then appeared in the film From Hell with Johnny Depp and has played regular parts in The Bill and Emmerdale.
I think the good thing about it is that after Bread, I didn't write another series that was not good or not accepted. I left on that note.
Bread was a hard act to follow, though Carla Lane's credit was good for 2 more BBC sitcoms, Screaming and Love, and then Searching for ITV. Carla then went on to spend more time campaigning for animal rights, but returned to the BBC in 2000 to write the Butterflies reunion special.
60, eh? I don't know how you do it. I looked 60 when I was 40, now I'm 65, I look 78. If I ever make it to 70, I'll look
dead.
After Bread, the nation's favourite matriarch, Jean Boat, starred with Carla Lane's other famous mother, Wendy Craig, in Brighton Bells, a short-lived version of the US Golden Girls. She's also spent time in Casualty, Holby City and The Bill before returning to her first love, the theatre. But what has become of her arch-rival, Lilo Lil?
I got this film role in Far and Away with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, and I played a brothel keeper, much to the glee of Ms. Jean Boat.
Well, that's a promotion, isn't it, from a tart?
Peter Howitt's career move paid off handsomely in 1998 when he wrote and directed the hugely popular Brit pick Sliding Doors, starring Gwyneth Paltrow and John Hannah. Peter then returned to his comedy roots, directing Rowan Atkinson's spy spoof, Johnny English. A stint in Hollywood followed, directing Julianne Moore and Pierce Brosnan in Laws of Attraction. Peter then went on to both direct and star in Dangerous Parking with Saffron Burrows, Tom Conti and his old Bread sibling, Victor Maguire.
I know there are lines in Sliding Doors that are pure Carla Lane. I hope she doesn't sue me.
The cast of Bread may now be scattered far and wide, but they all know how important that time was for them in the 1980s, sitting round the kitchen table with the China chicken in prime place in front of an audience of millions.
Bread was, I believe, the most perfect comedy show for a family to watch.
I think Bread touched a lot of people's hearts because it was about real people and the characters were really accessible. Everyone could identify with them.
The main thing is that it made a lot of people laugh. That's the main thing.
I think it encapsulated a time in England, a family feeling, a feeling of togetherness, a feeling of rising above the odds, and it was Carla Lane.
Everybody who speaks my name says Bread and Butterflies, Bread and Butterflies. So I should be called Carla Lane, Carla Bread and Butterflies Lane, really.
Next week, it ain't half hot, Mum.